Yeah. Neither do we have to lean in?
Like this is probably the best. So if you were to grab this top part and kind of talk, I could swing it back
we
and
have
forth.
to grab it?
Or
If
sure.
it's like placed in the middle of us?
I'll pass it.
you'll pass it.
Oh.
Pass the mic.
Right. Okay. Aloha mai kako, and welcome to the very first ever Ohia Radio broadcast. Hello and welcome to the Future of. Today we have three very special guests with us. Kumu Echeverria, a biology teacher at KS who also speaks Spanish. Hola, señorita.
Hola.
Kumu Souza is a physics teacher whose Portuguese bean soup is the second best in the world. In the world, Laura.
Whoa, first.
And Kumu Leah Carol Glennon, a biology teacher that gives out curry leaves instead of apologies. Everything I said is true. Almost. Okay. So before we start, I would like to make a shout out to our sponsors. You ever need to reach out to the universe for a lost item? Agana's telekinetic lost and found. Have you ever lost your cell phone, hydroflask, shoes, cards, keys, homework, boyfriend or girlfriend? Call Agana's telekinetic lost and found, and he'll get your lost item back. So, the topic for today, the GTO. The GTO was one of the best Ferraris ever built. Did you know the GTO stands for Grand Turismo Omologata?
M.
What?
M.
GMO.
Yes.
What does that stand for? I'm sorry.
Aren't you talking about a car?
I am.
GTO is a really nice car. Anyway.
Oh, we're talking about GMOs.
Oh, he's talking about a car.
GMOs. Genetically modified organisms. So what about them? Good, bad? Talk about it.
Ooh la la.
All right. I got something to start this off with. According to the CDC.
Center of Disease Control.
Yes. All right. That's the right acronyms, by the way.
Yeah, you better get your head straight. Yeah. I can't even think we're going to talk about Ferraris.
According to the CDC, 3 people have died from eating organic food. 0 has died from eating GMO food. Does that say something?
Well, what did they die of? And was it directly linked to organic food? Like, what
Yeah.
was it? Was it like raw potatoes?
Did they choke?
I mean,
You guys are supposed to just answer and not question. No.
You know, that's
This is a
science.
conversation.
So, I mean, we heard about people dying before from not washing their food and doing all of those things. So I'm not 100% sure what was the cause. I didn't read thoroughly. Make sure you always read your articles and your sources. At least it was CDC. But yes, let's go with
Okay.
maybe some direct link to
GMOs.
the organic side. But GMO, so far, nobody has died so far from GMO. There was a report that somebody came across and said that somebody did die. They had like allergic reaction to one of the splices or something. And they supposedly put in a fish gene in there and he couldn't eat fish and he had anaphylactic shock and died. But that was reported false.
Right.
So
So, it's actually, yeah, it may be true that people may not have died by eating GMOs, but people have died from the whole GMO issue.
what's that dude that was hung in jail? Hi, what's his name?
Epstein.
Epstein. Are we talking like Epstein type things?
Didn't hang himself.
Yeah, he was murdered by the government. No.
Is this the type
Yeah.
of death you're talking about? Like,
wow.
No.
Wow, that's
So-
crazy. The government does not like GMO? Or they like GMO. I don't know.
So, no, seriously. So,
if the government is any one of the 12 people listening, sorry.
I'm for whatever you guys want.
It was Lee Carroll that said that.
yeah, and I'm
Carol
not an
Clinton.
American citizen anyway, so doesn't count. I can say whatever. No, so actually, more seriously. So yeah, so who's dying from GMOs? So it's Indian farmers are actually committing suicide because they have what they thought they had purchased GMO seeds, particularly for cotton. And they actually hadn't, because there's a lot of, or they can be a lot of corruption in the whole market of selling seeds. And so you have and the GMO seeds, the cotton seeds, are more expensive than the regular native seeds. So I said that. My friend. Okay, so they're more expensive.
You know we're filming this, right? You don't need to whisper.
So
There's two
no,
cameras.
Cut all this
right,
out.
cut
not
all of this
cutting.
out because
We're
it's
on
a
a
serious
clock.
subject. It's serious.
That's already 5
So-
minutes.
Okay, so to all of you out there who are listening to me, okay, so this is what I have to say. So no, it's just serious. Because the GMO seeds for growing cotton are more expensive than the regular seeds. And so these farmers put out a lot of money and they often go into debt, and then they plant their fields, and then only to find that most of their crop is destroyed by the bollworm, which is the insect that eats cotton. And it's because that they had purchased seeds that actually were not GMO modified. And so they end up, some of them even drank the insecticide that they had purchased.
One of the issues too in that same realm is that there's a lot of developing countries that rely on their farms for income, families, etc. And if they go through the GMO seed business, they have those laws, really stringent laws, that they can't save seeds and reuse them to plant crops the next year. And those seeds are bioengineered to not be able to do that anyways, so you don't have the same type of sustainability with your farming that you would have had you not have bought GMO seeds. And they're great for drought resistant, pesticide resistant, etc. But how do those pros outweigh the cons for a farmer in a developing world?
Right. Ironically, the folks who developed golden rice, which is another GMO crop that has been genetically engineered to have vitamin A put into it. Oh, I should say vitamin A? Vitamin, sorry.
I said vitamin.
Vitamin.
Okay, to have
Data.
vitamin A put into it. So here's the irony of this. So that was developed like back in 1990s, right? And has been ready to go. But because of all of this pushback from the public about GMOs and a little bit of fear mongering going on too, this rice has never actually made it into the arena where it's actually grown for the people, except for the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Those governments have approved golden rice as a consumable product by people. And yet those are the very countries that are not vitamin A deficient.
So scientifically, what's the future of it? Like, what's the purpose of a scientist who wants to modify an organism?
I don't know. For me, I think a lot of it is what is the purpose, right? So in the case of the golden rice, the purpose was to prevent like 500,000 children from dying from vitamin A deficiency. So to me, that's a laudable purpose. And to go back to our original point about Monsanto and about seeds being more expensive, GMO seeds being more expensive than the local seeds, is that the golden rice folks, they gave it away. They did not want to profit at all from their technology, their biotechnology. And so there's the irony that we have this product that is free. No one's going to benefit from it. And yet it's not being used because of the pushback from the public about GMOs. And yet, on the other hand, we have cotton that is being sold at a higher price by people like Monsanto and their partners. And it's causing the problems that it's causing in India anyway.
I see the future of the GMO biotechnology push to feed the world, essentially. You know, we're able to feed millions more than we could before because we're creating plants that can withstand a drought, and we're not losing massive crops to pests and insects and whatnot. And that's something that's really interesting opinion I have of that is, should we be trying to feed the world? Should we be trying to remedy the exponential increase of the human population by trying to feed everyone? Because we're essentially just perpetuating that problem, and by trying to increase the carrying capacity of Earth. But we have already 80% of agricultural land on Earth is dedicated just to cattle farming for the goal of feeding our demand for beef. And if we continue to grow as a human population like we are massively, we have to feed all of those people. And as science comes in and figures out ways, like, okay, we can feed another billion more on Earth, awesome. How long does that go before our wonderful invention of GMO technology ends up being our demise? And what
we can look at the statistics of medicine, vaccines, antibiotics as a precursor to what you're saying. Because if we do now all of a sudden start having much more food, like, it's going to cause a huge population spike. So I can agree with you on that too.
But I think we need to go to the root of the population spike or the population increase. I think what we're talking about are sort of side effects of it. So we have food shortages, and we have diseases that are spreading more rapidly because we have an increase in population density. But I think it would be a hard argument to sell that we should withhold biotechnology because we don't want to provide the food for our expanding population. And the same would be true about vaccines and medications, but rather go to the root of why are people having so many children. And when you look at it, where is that happening? That's happening in countries that we call lesser developed countries. Like, if you look at places that are more developed, like Japan or Europe, they've actually got negative population growth rates, whereas it's other countries that are lesser economically developed. And so why are they having all those kids? They have those kids because they think kids are economic security for them. So we have to shift that culture. We have to shift that way of thinking, that your kids are not the ones who are going to provide for you when you're older. Your government will. But now for the government to provide for them when they're older, now you're talking about a whole political change.
Politics. What does science have to do with politics?
Ooh.
That should be a whole nother
Another one, yeah.
Another one.
Wow, really deep thought, guys. So it's prop time, and prop time is that time where we bring out our props. I'd like to share with you.
Oh, we bring out props
Yes.
for GMOs, right?
Yes.
Is that the GMO one?
Yes, excuse me. So my first prop that I got over here
We're
is
not supposed to show them.
actually a car air freshener from Japan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, brilliant shower. I don't know what that feels like, but
What does it have to do with GMO?
I thought we were going to talk about GTOs. but we're going to change the subject. So, yeah, that's it for me.
Okay, my prop is some papaya, locally grown, and this is relevant because 90% of papaya worldwide is now GMO'd to combat the ring spot virus, which is an RNA virus that wiped out over 50% of crop yields. So most of the ones we grow here are all GMO papayas. Sorry, Troy, would you like to go ahead now?
No. I think so.
Anybody want some apples?
I'll take an apple slice.
Where have they been?
Where's the peel?
It's from
bag's
McDonald's.
Why aren't they
Oh,
brown?
they're from McDonald's? You mean the same
Genetically
company that's
modified
up
without the
for
pill.
Sexual harassment suits right now? Yeah, it's McDonald's.
Would somebody sexually harass over this?
I would boycott
Oh
McDonald's.
my god.
I'm not going to McDonald's.
All right, why'd you bring apples?
I don't feel like eating McDonald's anymore for some reason. Someone ruined it for me. Thanks.
I brought
It's not good
apples
for you anyway.
because right now,
They're listening to this. Oh, I take all of that back.
there's no label on this, but somebody recently told me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so federally established law that all foods with genetically modified or bioengineered ingredients have to be labeled now. And there's a lot of pushback from that from companies like Monsanto because they feel that consumers won't make the choice to buy something that has a bioengineer label on it based on their lack of education on what that actually means, and people are afraid of it. But federally passed, so it initiates January 1st, 2020. All foods will need to be labeled bioengineered or GMO. And then mandatory by 2022. And I imagine between now and then there's going to be a lot of different types of lawsuits pushing back on that. But
Guarantee.
Okay, this is just sad. So we've taken an apple and we've cut it up and we've put it into a single-use plastics bag.
GMO. Stay on topic. At least go to the GTO.
I'm going to write to these guys. No, seriously. Why would we do that to an apple and the planet? Anyway, just saying.
When was the last time you brought a Happy Meal? Because there's
Happy
this.
Meal?
Yeah, there's the single-use
Yeah.
plastic in the chocolate
Okay.
milk,
You know what?
in the Go-Gurt.
We need to go to McDonald's and stand there and say, enough is enough.
GMO.
can I get a Big Mac while
Okay,
we're
wait.
doing that?
So we,
I'm hungry out here. That's enough. 2 Big Mac, large fries.
Didn't you get us food?
It's wrapped in paper.
yeah,
I
no
did.
snacks.
Yeah, I got you guys tacos.
Please, I hope it's not plastic. Dang it.
Oh my gosh.
Some plastic.
We did. Guacamole. Oh, we've got avocados in a bag. Oh gosh. Anyway, what are we talking about?
GMO.
Oh,
What's your prop?
genetic. Oh, my prop.
Yeah.
Okay, I got cotton here. Ta-da! So BT cotton, Bacillus thuringiensis cotton. So,
Of course.
So this is a cotton that has a gene, from a bacterium, Bacillus thuringiensis, that makes the cotton produce its own insecticide. So this cotton can, it produces an insecticide against the bollworm. So the bollworm is the bug that just destroys like thousands of acres of cotton. And but now it doesn't, because when they eat the leaves off of this cotton, the bollworm dies.
That's really interesting because I've seen clothing labeled as organic cotton, and I never thought much about it, but now I'm wondering if we support the organic cotton clothing industry, are we now not supporting struggling farmers that are trying to grow without paying for the expensive
Potentially.
seeds?
See, and that goes back to something that Troy actually started this whole discussion with is, people dying from, do people die or
Directly.
impacted by GMOs? And so, now we have people who, won't wear clothing that has been, produced with BT cotton or GMO cotton, because what they think that it's going to harm them, when in fact the enzyme that has been denatured in here is one that is particular to cotton. It's got nothing to do with
So-
It's really interesting.
yeah.
So could
and
we
it-
put that in food and eat it? Not that particular one, because I'm pretty sure that worm doesn't eat.
Yeah, I
because
think
of the
I think
insecticide?
actually there's BT tomatoes already.
Is there?
Mm-hmm.
Is it good?
Sure. Go to McDonald's.
Probably had one.
Sweet.
Oh, the quarter pounder.
With
With
cheese?
cheese. Yeah, of course.
From a GMO cow.
And on that note, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to the Future of. We'll see you next time on Ohio Radio.